Alright, hello and welcome to yet another episode. It's your boy Hank Hackerson with Hank Hacks Hackers, and we are going through the pen testing pathway today with TryHackMe. And so, just to give you an overview of where we're at, we did Hydra in the last video. We're going to do Python basics and Python for pen testers. And I'm sure you've heard of Python by now. If you haven't, it's a really cool programming language that's very, very useful, especially in the world of penetration testing. So we're going to go through that today. We're using TryHackMe. I want to say that this is also another free room. It is indeed another free room. And you can get access to it by just getting a free membership to TryHackMe. If you wanted to do more advanced stuff, you can obviously use the link in the description below to get yourself a paid membership and get a discount. If you go through that link, you get a $5 credit towards the $12 price tag. So it was already really affordable, but you'll get even a discount on top of that. So you could do that. And of course, you can always just press like, subscribe, share, and all of that stuff. Turn on the notification bell so that you get notified the next time a video comes out from this pathway. And yeah, you'll just learn more about Python and how to use Python for penetration testing. If you're not going to use the TryHackMe website to do the coding, because there's a little view site button that you press when you get into this module, and you can print the code here. You can type the code here and it'll give you an output at the bottom. So if you're not going to do that, you have to have Python installed on your computer, and you can literally go to python.org and install the latest version of Python on your computer, and then you can do it that way. So either way, you could do it as long as you have access to Python. There are some inner modules, I think, that comes with TryHackMe that you may need to also install if you don't have those installed on your computer. So for this exercise, it might just be better if you just used the TryHackMe website and you went ahead and used their web portal to run the code, right? So we're just gonna do like a quick little review of what it actually is, and then we'll just start doing some of the exercises that they tell us to do, right? So in this room, we're gonna be talking about the hands-on stuff with Python programming, and they say that it's not required to succeed in security. It's just a great skill to have. And as the scripting for pen testers module demonstrates, which I haven't done, so that would be a fun one to do and record with you guys. Being able to program allows you to create security tools and quick scripts that will aid you in hacking, which is very, very important. And the same thing with defending and analyzing and blue team and all that stuff. So scripting in general is going to be really useful. Python is one of the easier languages to do. And so in this particular room, we're going to learn about variables, loops, functions, data structures, if statements, and files. And we're going to use the code editor that's on the right-hand side of the screen here. Or you can just go to the official Python website, which is this place right here. And, python.org downloads, and then you download the most recent version of Python for yourself, and you can get yourself going that way. So in programming, syntax is important as it describes in the structures of valid programming language. So it tells the computer how to read the code and using the rules that control the structure of symbols, punctuation, and so on and so forth. So let's just dive into it real quick and then kind of see what's going on. So the first ever program is print hello world. And so it's a print command, and it's very easy to do. This one right here, so there's a print command already here. It says print learn security with TryHackMe. So you run the code, and in the bottom it says learn security with TryHackMe. So if I just change this to hello world, it should give the first flag, right? So hello world, and then run the code. And then there you go. We got the first flag that says, THM print statements. The print command is very, very useful. And so another way that we could do this, because it basically helps you figure out whether or not the code is running successfully and it's doing what it's supposed to do, just to kind of give you some basic structure understanding. Anything that you put in print needs to be, if it's not a variable, and we'll talk about variables in a little bit, it needs to be a string, and a string is inside of double quotes or single layer quotes. I got into the habit of just using double quotes because sometimes you want to put a single quote in here. So it could be something like, what's your name? And if you do that, since there's a single quote in here, if you only had single quotes on the outside, it would break the code. So let's actually do that so you can see. So you see how the coloration changes, and it's no longer that full string. So what it's going to do is it's going to print this, but then the rest of this is going to give us an error. So if I run this, it says syntax error, right? Because it wasn't properly syntaxed. So if I change that to double quotes and then change this back to double quotes, now I can have a single quote in here and it'll still print it and it'll say, what's your name, right? So that's important to know. It's one of those syntax rules, right? So print what's your name or print anything in here. And then if we wanted to use a variable, which is probably the next thing that we're going to do, variables is actually the fourth task. So let's not skip ahead, but we can talk about variables in a little bit. So we have little things like the addition variable. So 1 plus 1 equals 2. So if I did this, I will actually combine it here. So we'll do math equals 1 plus 1, and then, or let's see what we could do here. We could do probably result equals 1 plus 1, and then print result. It should give us 2. So we're doing both. Yeah, there you go. So we're doing both operators. So mathematical operator, we're using plus an addition, and then we're using a variable now. So the variable is result, and you can assign anything to that. And then you could just do 1. Well, 1 times 1 is going to be 1. So let's do 2, times 34, right? And then print the result, and it's going to give us 68. So it's really useful when you're trying to do complex addition, subtraction, multiplication, division. Modulus means that it gives you the leftover, so the remainder. So 10 divided by 2 would equal 5, so there's no remainder. But if we did 10 divided by 3, there should be a remainder, right? So if I did 10 divided by 3, it's going to give us the remainder of that, which would be 1, right? So there would be 3 3's inside of 10, and then it would be a remainder of 1. And then the exponent would be if you wanted to go to the power of, so 5 to the power of 2 would equal 25, which is what that looks like. So that's basically what we're talking about here. 5 to the power of 2, which is 5 times 5. 5 to the power of 3 would be 5 times 5 times 5, right? So that's the general approach to mathematical operators. And then you can have loops and if statements, which we're going to talk about in a little bit, which is going to show you everything else as well. So I'm not gonna jump too far ahead here. So, but if we did, so in the code editor, print the result of 21 plus 43, what is the flag? So if I did, let's see if it'll actually work if we do it with a variable. 21 plus 43, print the result, and it does give us the actual flag. So 142 minus 52, if we did that, print the result, and it'll give us the next flag, so on and so forth. So you could just run these exercises and it'll give you the flag for that. And it's very, very simple to do. We could have also done, just to, because I think I did get ahead of myself. So we could have also just done this. So instead of doing print the result, we could have probably done 10 times, 342. So print 10 times 342, and it gives us 3420. So you could just, instead of putting it in a variable, you could do the actual operator or the mathematical equation inside the print statement. When you're dealing with digits or integers, as they call them, when you're dealing with integers, it doesn't have to be inside quotes because it will convert it to a string. And now that is now going to actually be a mathematical operator. It's just going to actually print the actual integers as well as the operator and so on. So if we wanted to be, I think if we could do an f string, it might do that. Nope, f string doesn't do that. F string is when we're using variables inside the string. So when you're doing anything that has to do with integers, you don't use any quotations. That's basically the rule. And 5 squared, so if we just did 5 to the power of 2, and you have 25, and then you would get your last flag. So that's basically it for the operators. So let's look at variables real quick. So variables would be food equals ice cream in a string right here. That's one variable. Money equals 2,000. That would be the second variable. And then you could use that as a part of your print statement later on, right? So we have two variables. The variable named food stores a string, which is words, and then the other variable called money stores an integer or a number, and they're powerful because you can change them throughout the program. So I could change the money later on by adding more money to it, right? So in this example, they gave us age as the variable. So age is 30, and then you could do age equals age, the first instance of it, plus 1. And then if you printed this, it'll give you 30 plus 1, which would be 31, right? Then you have, so we updated the variable, they mentioned that. We have the, on the right, we have what we're setting the variable to. We already talked about that. So let's talk about data types. So you have string data type, which we already talked about it. The integer, which would be whole numbers. Float is a number that contains a decimal point. So this is a float. 9.8 would be a float. So a Boolean is used to, it's restricted for data that is either true or false, and we'll probably talk about some examples of that as well. And then you have a list, which is a series of different data types stored inside a collection, and lists are stored inside of brackets. So these things, lists are stored inside of that. And then you can have dictionaries that are stored inside of the little squiggly brackets. So we have some examples here. So you have, the string would be Star Wars or Matrix or Indiana Jones. The float would be their rating. So there's a decimal point in here. The times that it was viewed, that's the integer because it's a whole number. Is it a favorite? So it's either a favorite or it's not a favorite. And then has it been seen by who? So Alice and Bob, Charlie, Daniel, Evie. And this could easily be a way that Netflix, for example, kind of manages data on their back end, where they see the name of the title, what it's been rated across the board with all their viewers, how many times that title has been viewed, and then has it been favorited before, and who has it been seen by. So let's say in my account, I have me, my sister, my mom. It'll show who out of our account has seen that title, right? And so that's a very simple but a powerful explanation of how these things actually work. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna try to get exactly what they tell us to do here with the value, right? So we're gonna do a, whoops, I kind of went ahead here. Let's see if I can still, I'm gonna type it and then we'll kind of be able to see the code. Let me see if I can zoom in a little bit more. All right, so it says create a variable called height and set its initial value to 200. There's that. On a new line, add 50 to the height variable. So it could be height equals height plus 50, all right? And then on another new line, print out the value of height. So just like that, and that's it. And there you go. We have the last, the flag that is implied to this. And very simple exercise, right? So we created one variable that has the value of height. Then we updated that variable with an addition of 50 by just, you could do the same thing, right? So it's like height equals this height plus 50. And so when you do a print statement, it'll print the most recent instance of that variable, and that'll give us the new number. So that's basically what that was. So now let's try to create some Boolean operators here. So it says logical operators allow assignment and comparisons to be made that are used in conditional testing, such as if statements. Whoops. So these are the logical operators here. You have equal. So if you have two equal signs, that means it's equal to something. So if x equals 5, then do something. If x is less than 5, do something else. If x is less than or equal to 5, if x is greater than 5, greater than or equal to 5. And so these, and this shouldn't be confused with the assignment to a variable. So notice how we have one equal sign over here, and this is actually two equal signs. That's very important. When you do one equal sign, you're actually assigning a value to the variable. When you do two equal signs, you're checking to see if that variable has that result. And that's very important to understand. Then you have the Boolean operators and, or, and not. So you could be, if x is greater than or equal to 5 and x is less than or equal to 100, return true, right? If x is equal to 1 or x is equal to 10, return true. If not y, so if x not y, basically that's kind of what we're saying here. If x not y, you don't say is not y, you say if not y or if not, etc. And that's the opposite. So if it's false, basically, you're going to return true, right? So that's kind of how that works. And so here are some examples of this. Let's just type this out just so you can kind of see what that actually looks like. So we have a equals 1, if my keyboard would actually type here. So a equals 1, and if a equals 1, so the first one we assigned a value to a, and in the second line we are checking to see if that value is actually true, or a is greater than 10, then print something. And also notice the indentation. So after any kind of an if statement, there needs to be an indentation or 4 spaces, and then you would print a is either 1 or above 10, right? So it's either of those, right? And so if we did that, it would probably print that a is either 1 or above 10, right? Which is 1 or greater than 10, which it kind of doesn't make sense because it could be a bunch of different numbers. So if we did 11, it'll also print the command for us because it could be either 1 or less greater than 10. But if I do 2, it won't print it because a is not 2. So it's going to be one of these two conditions are going to be set to false. So this is not going to print. Now, if I did else print a is not either 1 or above 10, so you give it a else statement. So if this, else do this other thing, then it would print a is not either 1 or above 10 because we gave it a value of 2. And that would work with anything that is up to 10, right? So 3, but then if I did 12, it would print the first one, which is a is either 1 or above 10, which is, it's kind of confusing as a program, but that's basically the gist of it, right? So if a equals this or a is greater than 10, then give me that value or give me this statement. If not, so else, give me this other thing, right? And so now we have kind of a more complex version of that. So you have if, elif, and else. So let's do this one, right? So name equals Bob, hungry, whoops, I gotta close that. Hungry equals true. So Bob is hungry, basically. If name equals Bob and hungry equals true, then I want you to print that Bob is hungry, right? Then you have elif, so else if name equals Bob and not hungry, so he's not hungry, right? So meaning when we say and not hungry, that means hungry is not true. That's basically it. So when you don't have to say and not hungry equals true, you just say and not hungry. And the program just assumes that we're referring that hungry is not a true statement or a true value. Then it's going to print Bob is not hungry, right? Just like that. And then you have else, which is the final statement, which if all of the other things are not true. So the name isn't Bob and the value is not hungry, then we're going to print not sure who this is or if they're hungry. That's it, right? So now we have these things. And so bad input on line 3. So let's check line 3. Name equals Bob. What did I miss here? Name equals Bob. Hungry equals true. I printed exactly what they said over here. So maybe we should just create a new line here. And let's see if that works. There you go. That works. So we probably either needed to separate this by a comma. See if that works. Nope. That does not work. So we needed to actually have 2 lines for those. I feel like something could be done with this. Maybe if we used a semicolon. There you go. Semicolon would have worked. There was no semicolon in this line of code right here. That's why it gave us a syntax error. So if you want to have your variables all be on one line, you would need to separate it with a semicolon, or you would just need to put the variables on a new line and it would still run. So now we could test different versions of this, right? So if name is Hank and hungry equals true, it would say not sure who this is or if they're hungry, right? Because that wasn't part of the conditions that we gave. The only condition that we gave is that if the name is Bob and he is or he is not hungry. But if the name is Hank, then everything in this section just breaks. It doesn't exist. But if I do Bob here and I do false here, then it'll say Bob is not hungry, right? Simple. It's simple. Hopefully you can kind of understand what's actually happening here. The main point is that we're using if statements, elif statements, and else statements. And then within those, we're just kind of determining these things right here. And so there's I don't know if we talk about input here at all, but there is something that we could do where instead of assigning a value to name, we could have an input be what is your name? And then so now this is giving the user, which would be me in this situation, it's going to ask me a question. Oh, I guess that's my input field. So input, I would say Bob maybe. Oh, there you go. Maybe let me run. So every time I do that, so the pop-up is going to come up. So that is, typically that's not how it works though. It would say it in the bottom right here, what is your name? And then I would be able to enter it down here. But if I do any kind of an input command, a window pops up where I would enter my name. So if I do Bob, and then it would say, what is your name? Bob is not hungry. So it gives us the input. And what this means is that it basically can ask you, the user, what the name is, and then it'll run the rest of the program. So if I did the same thing and I did Bob and then ran it, it would say Bob is hungry because I have true over here. But if I ran it again and I said that my name is Hank, it's going to give us the last statement, right? So not sure who this is or if they are hungry. But typically, this is not how it looks. This is not what it looks like when you use an input statement. It would ask you in the bottom right here or in your terminal. It would ask this question and then you would respond right after. And then this response would come in the next line. So I don't think this was designed for that. So we're going to just leave that alone and we're going to leave it as is. And we're going to get Bob is hungry. So this was our little program that we used if, elif, and else statements. So let's see if we can do a shipping project here and see if we can get this response. I haven't done this in a while, so I may fail, or I may need to I may need to do a couple of trial and error stuff. So using if statements allows programs to make decisions, and then they let a program choose a decision based on a condition. Below is an example of how an if statement can be used to determine the section of code which print statements to use. So if age is less than 17, you would print you are not old enough to drive. Otherwise, you are old enough to drive, right? Simple enough. In the example, if you're younger than 17, the program will output the text you're not old enough. However, if you are old enough, then it's going to let you drive, right? That's basically the condition. Depending on a condition, in this example, the age variable, the program will run different sections of code. There are some key components we note from our example above. The if keyword that indicates the beginning of the if statement. followed by the conditions. If the if statement is only run if the condition or the sets of conditions are true. In our example, age needs to be less than 17. If that condition is true, then the code will run. If it's greater than 17, the second part of the code will run, which is inside the else statement. Then the colon marks the end of the if statement. So this is also very important. If you don't have these colons right here, then you're going to get a syntax error. It's just not going to run. So after every if or elif or else, and then there's also while loops and a lot of other stuff, for loops. After any of those types of statements, you need to have a colon, otherwise the code will break and it won't run. And so note the indentation, we've already talked about that as well. So the code starts, it verifies whether or not the driver is younger than 17. If they are younger than 17, it prints you are not old enough to drive and it stops running. If the driver is older than 17, it says you are old enough to drive and it stops running. That's basically it. So in this exercise, we will code a small application that calculates and outputs the shipping cost for a customer based on how much they've spent. In the code editor, click the shipping.py tab and follow the instructions to complete this task. Once you've completed the application, once you've written the application in the code editor shipping tab, a flag will appear, which is the answer to this. I've gotten it. So at some point I did this correctly. And then in shipping.py on line 12, when using the code editor's hints, change the customer's basket cost variable to 101 and rerun your code. You will get a flag if the total cost is correct based on your code. The flag is the answer to this question. So it seems like I got it right the last time that I did this. So let's actually do it. So shipping.py, here's our notes. Okay, so in this project, you will create a program that calculates the total cost of a customer's shopping basket, including shipping. Excuse me. That was gross. So it'll determine the total cost of their shopping basket, including shipping. If a customer spends over $100, they get free shipping. If a customer spends less than $100, the shipping cost is $1.20 per kilogram of the basket's weight. Print the customer's total basket cost, including shipping, to complete this exercise. Okay, so the customer basket cost is 34. Their basket weight is 44 kilograms, I'm guessing. So write the statement here. So what are we doing? If a customer spends over $100, they get free shipping. If they spend less than $100, the shipping cost is $1.20. So we're gonna do if. So first we want to actually determine the price of the shipping first. So we're going to do customer basket, or excuse me, not that. It's going to be shipping cost is going to equal to the customer basket weight multiplied by $1.20. So I'm just going to do 120 like this. So 1.2. Hopefully that'll actually process as a float, right? And so let's just test it. So first we're going to print shipping cost. I just want to test to see if this is going to run my code without any errors. Okay, so 52.8, so that part does work. So now what I need to do is I need to establish the customer's basket cost, their total cost, excuse me. So I need to establish their total cost. So their total cost is going to equal to shipping cost plus their customer basket cost. And then now we're going to print total cost to verify that. Okay, so we got the first flag, which is the if statement is right. So we figured out their total cost. So now we're going to print the total cost, which is fine. So now we want to see if our if statement is going to work, right? And so it says what? If a customer spends over $100, they get free shipping. If a customer spends less than $100, the shipping cost is $1.20 per kilogram of the basket. Okay, so now we need an if statement that determines that. So they clearly spent less than 86 or less than $100. So first, let's do the first part of the if statement. If total cost is greater than, so it says over 100, so I don't think it's greater than or equal to. So it's over 100, print your shipping is free. right? That's what we need to say. Okay. Else print, and I'm gonna do an F string. Your total cost is, and I'm just gonna do the variable for total cost inside of this thing. Whoops. That should work, although it's not modifying it for me, so I don't think an F string is gonna work in here. So what we gotta do is we gotta combine our total cost is, and then do plus total cost, like that. So let's see if this works. Run the code. Cannot concatenate string and float objects on line 21, which is line 21, and total cost is this. So maybe I can do a string and add that to the end of this. Let's see if that'll work for us. Okay, so it did work and it allowed us to do that. And so now let's see if we actually can change the cost of this to 50, which would give us, I think, more than, or let's just guarantee it. Let's do 60, and it should give us more than $100, and it should say shipping is free. But it didn't give me the new flag. So what have I done incorrectly here? Because I do want that flag. So print the customer's total basket cost including shipping. Oh, I see. Your shipping is free. Your total cost is, and then we're going to do that, plus string total cost. And then we'll just do your shipping is not free, your total cost is that. Okay, so that should be right? What if I do elif total cost is less than 100? Maybe that's fine. Maybe that'll give us the flag. Let's see. Okay. It's not giving us the flag. So let's see what the hint says. You've redeemed the hint. Replace X's with the code to complete this exercise. I see. Oh, interesting. So I was supposed to create a new variable that actually has the 120 and then the basket cost and then the basket weight. And then so if the basket cost is greater than or equal to X, which I'm supposed to say 100, I guess, is going to be free shipping. And then else if the shipping cost, or else shipping cost would be the customer basket weight times their customer per package, right here, the cost per package. Then the customer basket cost is going to equal to shipping cost plus shipping cost plus, wait, customer basket cost is going to be, oh, I see, so shipping cost plus customer basket cost. And then that should be it. So let's run that. On line 22. What did I do wrong here? Okay, well, I feel kind of silly about this because I think the issue that, well, I modified this a few times and I'm going to do a couple of more modifications as well. But I think the issue was that I was actually missing an underscore under my shipping cost. That's why it didn't work. The original recommendation that they gave us was they said customer basket cost equals and then X, and we were supposed to fill in the X. And my, I think it was because I was missing the shipping cost, and then what I had was this. So let's see if this will also work, or if it's going to give us an error again. No, that also worked. Yeah, so that was my issue, is that this is basically what the code was. And there is no variable like this. There's like nothing that exists like that. And so it just needed to be an underscore right there. And it would have worked. And it would have been a perfect calculation for everything. And I was pretty close in my original rendition of this. It just so happens that I didn't create a new variable up here for that. And I just had the cost of the shipping inside of my operator or inside of my variable, and that part was the part that was glitching and it wasn't working. But this is it. This is very, very simple enough code. I'm happy that I was close enough, and all I had to do was just create a new variable, because I think the first time that I did this I was so far off that I had no idea what the heck was going on, and I had to really go Google some things and stuff like that. So this was it. This was a pretty easy one, and we calculated the shipping cost right here. And so if statement shopping, the flag is such and such, and so it says change the customer basket cost variable to 101. So let's change that here to get the next flag, and there we go, we got our next flag as well. So that was it. That was basic enough. And so total basket cost, including shopping, is 101, and you got free shipping. So that's it. That's basically what it was. So now we are going to move on to the next section, which is loops. So creating while loops and for loops. Okay, so on the for loops and while loops section, we're just going to read through this real quick, and it's one of those things. Python in general is kind of self-explanatory, but while loops, it does this, right? So for I, let's say integer, whatever, equals 1, and so while I is less than or equal to 10, print I, and then add 1 to it for each iteration that you do, right? So this, as it says right here, it's going to run 10 times, and I'm just going to show you. Well, let's go back to our script right here. So we're going to do it like this. I equals to 1, and then while I is less than or equal to 10, print I, and then I want you to add 1 to I. And so what it's going to do is going to keep running it, and then it's going to keep adding 1 to this until it gets to the number 10, and then it's going to stop, right? So if we run this, you'll see it'll print right here. It's going to 1, 2, 3, and it's just going to run it all the way up until it hits 10, and then it's going to stop because we did this, right? If we didn't do that last part, it would just keep printing 1. I think the script itself is actually kind of now broken because I press play, and it's going to be a continuous thing. I think it's going to stop. I have to, yeah, so page unresponsive. So we're going to exit that, and we're going to restart it. There we go. So if this was my normal computer, it would just keep printing 1 over and over and over and over and over and over again. And the reason why it stopped, I think, is because this probably doesn't have the computing power to just keep running a script over and over and over again. And so that's the issue with that. So we had to add that last little line in there, which is I equals I plus 1, so that it'll keep printing over and over and over again until it reached 10, and then it would stop. And that's the whole idea with a while loop. Now there's a for loop, which is now this, right? So if I just did websites, and I guess I could just copy and paste this just to make it a little bit easier and more time saving. We're going to paste the code right here. So it says websites equals, and this is a list. So we were talking about a list in one of our previous tasks. And in this particular list, there's a bunch of strings. As you can see that they're inside the quotations, the double quotes, and they're separated by commas, right? So that's basically a script. It's a list. It's going to be inside these square brackets, and then you have them separated by commas. It could be numbers in here, just regular integers, or it could be a bunch of strings, and it could even be a Boolean, right, which is a true or false value, so on and so forth. So for site and websites, print site. And so basically what this is going to do is just going to print these 3 sites for us right here, right? And so if I added more to this, right, so I could just add, let's say, a digit to it, and I could add true as a Boolean and just print that, it'll also print all of those things. So it doesn't discriminate as to what is in here, especially when it's inside these brackets and you're separating them by commas. It'll just print whatever the item is inside here, so long as it's been separated by a comma. And that's basically how a list works. And then this is how a for loop works. So it's for site in websites, and I could just do that and it would still do the same thing. So essentially, for whatever site is not defined online for, oh, excuse me, I have to change this to this as well. So for anything in websites, print the anything, and then you run that and it'll just run it for you. And this could be for X in websites, print X, for site in websites. So it doesn't really matter what that part is, as long as you've used both of them, you've used it in both instances correctly. But it could just be for X in websites, for dash in websites, anything like that, print that, and it'll print it for you. And that's basically what a loop looks like. So very, very simple, right? And then we have the last version of this, which is the for I in range of 5. So instead of saying, while this is 1 and it's less than thing, we could say for I in the range of 5, print I. And what this is going to do is it's going to print everything up to 5, but it's not going to print the actual number 5. So it's going to stop at 5. And so if I wanted to actually print up to 5, I would have to change that to 6, and then I would do it and it would run until 5. I could do this to 20, and I would run that, and it would run everything until 20, which is 19, and it would stop at that. So the range is very useful, and this could be also done with a string as well. So it doesn't necessarily have to be with a number. So let's see if we could do it with a string. For I in range, this is a string. Let's try that. Let's see if that actually works, or if it'll give us a value. No, it has to be an integer. Okay, so I stand corrected. So the range has to be applied to an integer only. It won't work with anything that is not an integer. Okay, learn something new. And so that's it. That's the for loop. Okay, so now let's try to complete our Bitcoin project. And the Bitcoin project is part of this Python file right here, and it has our instructions over here as well. We also have instructions on this side. So it says, as the program starts to get bigger and more complex, some of your code is going to be repetitive, writing the same code to do the same calculations, and this is where functions come in. A function is a block of code that can be called at different places in your program. You could have a function to work out a calculation, such as the distance between 2 points on a map, and then output formatted text based on certain conditions. Having functions removes repetitive code, as a function's purpose can be used multiple times throughout a program. So we can say the function, so def defines a function. So the function would be called say hello, and then you're passing a name parameter. I think that's what it's called. It's followed by a name that the programmer defines, and it's a function parameter, correct? So the name is a parameter, and this could be left empty, by the way, but we've required that this function get a name passed to it. And then for whatever times this is called, you could say hello name, nice to meet you, and then you say hello, and you put the Ben in here. And so this is what it's going to look like if we actually ran this and we called it multiple times, right? So just so you know, this is let's go back to the script, and we're going to paste this here, and we're going to say hello Ben, and then we're going to do it again, say hello Hank, and say hello Mark. So we called it 3 times. We called this function 3 times. So we're going to get 3 print statements. That's going to say hey Ben, hey Hank, hey Mark, nice to meet you, right? So that's what that does for you. So instead of having to redo this the entire time and then assign a new name to it and so on and so forth, you wrote one function and then you called that function multiple times and you just passed a new parameter to it. And then when you do that, it just does the whole thing. So this could be a long function, right? It could be doing a lot of things for you. And then all you have to do is just pass the parameter to it and it'll complete that entire function for you. So that's basically what that does. And this could have been empty, and then this would end up being empty, and then we would need to assign something to it manually, right? So the def word indicates the beginning of a function. We talked about that. Is followed by the name parameter, and then following the function name is a pair of parentheses that holds the input values that we can pass into the function. In our example, it's a name. A colon marks the end of the function header, which is the theme when it comes down to writing anything like loops and functions and stuff like that. You have to wrap it with a colon or end it with a colon. And then notice the indentation, because just like for loops and while loops, it needs to have an indentation to imply that everything within this belongs to this function. And then similar to if statements, anything after the colon that is indented is considered a part of the function, which is all of this stuff right here. And then at the end, you can run everything else and then call the calc cost function in this particular example. So let's run this one and then we'll see what this one looks like. So we're just going to go here, we're going to paste it, and then so the function reads, the name of the function is calc cost, or it's calculating costs, and then you have the item. So if the item equals sweets, return $3.99, which is going to be the cost of this item, right? Elif, the item is oranges, return $1.99, else return 99 cents. So if anything other than oranges and sweets, the cost is going to be 99 cents. You have spent a total of $10. So now spent equals spent plus the calculated cost for sweets. Now it's going to give us the total cost, which is probably going to be $13.99, right? So if we ran this and came down here, the cost is $13.99. So if I went and did oranges here, the cost will probably turn into $11.99. Scroll down, $11.99. If I did nothing, so if we just left this blank, it should just say what? $10.99. So if there's nothing, because this is the last part of it, it just adds, because we still did call this. Now, if we didn't call this, it would just say you spent $10, right? So if we do call the function, if we do call the calc cost function, calc cost, and just leave it like that, then it will for sure add at least something to the cost or that was spent. But if we pass anything in here like sweets, then you have that, $13.99. I could also do plus calc cost oranges, and it will probably add that to the cost too, right? $15.98. So that's basically how you run a function with multiple variables inside it, with multiple if statements inside it. You could also have a for loop inside of your function. You could have a while loop inside of your function. The return statement right here returns the result of this statement. So it doesn't print anything onto the screen. It just returns this to the overall program so that you can use that value. And same thing right here. You could use this value, so on and so forth. If we didn't have this down here, then this would be a useless function, right? So the return function is very important. And so let's see what the description right here says. So if we call the function and pass in sweets as the item parameter, the function will return a decimal number, which is a float in the code above. And we take a variable called spent and add the cost of sweets to that. When we call calc cost, it will return the number $3.99, which is what we already saw. So let's see if we can use this inside the Bitcoin Python file. So what we need to do, write a program that tells you what the value of Bitcoin falls below a particular value in dollars. In the code editor, click on Python or Bitcoin, excuse me. Write a function called Bitcoin to USD with two parameters, which is the Bitcoin amount and the excuse me, I got a call coming in. So write a function called Bitcoin to USD with two parameters, which is the Bitcoin amount, which is the amount of the Bitcoin that you actually own, and the Bitcoin value, and then the value of the Bitcoin in USD. Now the function should return the USD value, which is your Bitcoin value in USD. To calculate this in the function, you times Bitcoin amount variable by the Bitcoin value to return the value. And then the start of the function should look like this. So that's the start of the function. And then once you've written the Bitcoin to USD function, we use it to calculate the value of your Bitcoin in USD and then create an if statement to determine if the value falls below 30,000. If it does, put a message alert that you have fallen below 30,000. And so then it's going to tell us the value is actually 24,000. And so what that's going to do. So investment in Bitcoin is 1.2. That's how much you have. Bitcoin to USD value is 40,000. So write a function that calculate that. So it's going to be what are we calling it? We're calling it Bitcoin to USD. Is going to be the name of the function, and we're passing the parameters Bitcoin amount and Bitcoin value USD. Those are going to be our parameters, and that's going to be our function. And then it says what we want to do is we want to calculate the, should return the USD value, which is your Bitcoin to this. Okay, so essentially it's going to be, let's see. USD value is going to equal to Bitcoin amount times Bitcoin value USD, and use the function to calculate if it falls below 3,000. Return USD value. USD value is less than 30. Print your value is below 30,000, else print your value is above 30,000. Okay, whoops, 30,000. So we have to call our function now. And we're going to pass it the Bitcoin amount, which is going to be investment in Bitcoin, and the Bitcoin value USD, which is Bitcoin to USD. So let's see if that works. That's what I had. Unbelievable. Investment in USD equals Bitcoin to USD. Oh, I see. Come on. Okay, fine. Gosh, I was so close too. Okay, so Bitcoin to USD, then we need to first do the two parameters, which is Bitcoin amount, and then there's going to be the Bitcoin value USD. I'm so annoyed. I had this right. And so the USD value is going to equal to Bitcoin amount multiplied by the Bitcoin value USD. And then it's going to return our value for us. And then the investment in USD is going to equal this function called by this. And then what we're going to pass as the parameters to it is our original two variables right here. Let me zoom in a little bit. So this is the first function that we're supposed to create. These are the parameters that we're supposed to pass to it, meaning that in order for it to run, it needs to be passed at least two parameters. And then we already have these values up here, right? So the Bitcoin amount is going to be this, and then the Bitcoin to USD amount is going to be the value USD. And so our final value our USD value is going to be equal that those two parameters multiplied each other, and it's going to return that value for us. Then we have a new variable down here, which is investment in USD, is going to equal this function with the original variable for investment in Bitcoin passed to it, as well as the original variable for the value passed to it. So with those two values, this is going to run. And so now this is our new value. Now it says if investment in USD is less than or equal to 30,000, then print investment is below 30,000, sell it. If it's not that, so it's basically if it's more than that, investment is above 30,000. And so Bitcoin to USD right now is 40,000, and the total amount is going to be more than that. So I think it's going to be what, 48,000, something like that. So it says investment is above 30,000, and so Bitcoin investor. So let's now put it down below 30, so which is 24,000, and run that, and it's going to run the output of this. I was so close. I'm so annoyed that I didn't do that part. I literally was just missing this freaking thing, and I could have just printed that out. But fine, whatever. If we got it to work. And so we're just going to run it one more time. We're going to review it one more time. We have two original variables, which is the investment in Bitcoin, which is our actual Bitcoin amount that we own, and then the value of it, which is 24,000 in this case. The first part of the function is, this is what it's called, Bitcoin to USD. It requires two parameters, which is Bitcoin amount and the Bitcoin value USD. And then this function is going to process the result for the USD value, so the total value that we have in USD, which is going to be the amount of Bitcoin multiplied by the value. And then it's going to return that for us. And then we created another variable that calls on the function and passes through the two original variables right here. And then that is going to return a result for us, which is going to be basically our USD value. And now we write an if statement that says, if our investment in USD is less than 30,000, notify me that it's less than 30,000, which in my opinion, you shouldn't be selling. If that happens, you should be buying more, but whatever. If it's over 30,000, hey, you're over 30,000 and you're all good. Just let them know that that's what it is. And that's basically it. And so if we write 50,000, and then we just run it, it's going to come back and say, hey, it's above 30,000. That's fine. Which if you were going to sell, you would sell when you're you're gaining money. But that's neither here nor there. That's not I'm not here to give my opinion on investing. But that's it. That's basically our Bitcoin to USD Python file, which was fairly simple. I'm still so annoyed that I just missed that one part where I was supposed to call on it. Well, whatever. Moving on. So now we're going to be reading from the file. So there's something called the flag.txt file that we're supposed to read, and we can't access it. It doesn't let me access it. So I'm going to go back to our script Python file over here. And it says what we want to do is we want to open the file name. And so the file name in our case is going to be flag.txt. And we want to open it in R, which is read mode. And then if you do print f.read, it should print it, right? It should read it. And there's the flag. That's simple. And there's the flag right there. And that's basically it. That was easy and super simple to do. Just a quick little note for you. So the f variable is the open text command, and it opens it. You have to put the actual file name, and if this is inside a directory, you need to refer to that directory. In this situation, it assumes that that text file is inside the same directory that the script file is in, so we don't have to do anything else. But if it was in a different directory, you would put the full path of that directory, and it needs to be, the whole thing needs to be in quotes, and then comma R, which is read mode, and then it would just be able to read it. And then so now you do print the f variable dot read, so that it'll actually read it, and then you have to have these two parentheses inside of those two parentheses. So that's very important. Everything that you do in Python has two parentheses at the end of it. Even if there's nothing that's being inside the parentheses, you gotta do that. And then put that inside of the two other parentheses, and you have your flag, which is file read, and we were able to do that. So there's that. Now we have this thing right here, which kind of allows us to append. So this is another mode that you can open a file in. And append means you add something to the end of the file, right? So you open the file, and that's the name of the file, and then you open it in append mode so that you can write to that file something, 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 and it'll add it to the end of the file. So it'll be a new entry at the end of the file, and you've appended it. So it doesn't overwrite anything that's in here. It just adds this to the end of it. And then close the file, because you don't want to leave the file open, and it may be tricky because this is like a security issue. If you didn't close it and you had an open file, there's a variety of things that could happen in that. And then you have write mode, which basically creates this file. You put it in write mode, and so you're creating and writing to a new file, and then you write whatever you want to in it, and then you close it. If you open this file in write mode, and then you wrote this, it would replace whatever the contents of this file were with this. So that's very important to know. If you just want to add something to a file, you would do it with append. If you want to overwrite a file, which I don't know why you would do that, but if you want to overwrite a file, you would then go ahead and do it with this. As a hacker, if you wanted to ruin somebody's business, you would probably open it in write mode and you would overwrite it with whatever, and then that would destroy their data, so on and so forth. So that's maybe one of the instances that you would use something like this. But for yourself, if you're trying to modify files, only do it with append, don't do it with write, because it would overwrite everything that's inside that. It would rewrite stuff, and it would replace everything that's inside that file. It's better to create a new file, as it says right here, create a new file, and then do it in write mode, so on and so forth. And what you could do is you could combine these, right? So you could say f equals this in read mode, and then a new variable would be f.read, and then that new variable would end up being written to a new file, and then you could be sure that the original file name was never messed with and you didn't lose it, right? So that's important to know. And then we have our import function, and the import command, can bring a lot of great things into your Python project. And there's a lot of stuff that doesn't come with the basic installation of Python, and there's a lot of libraries that you can use. And this is just one of them, which is date time. And then so you do print current time, and it should just print the current date and time right now, which is this. So 1/16/2024, and this is doing military time, so it's 2:21, right? Yeah, it is 2:21 exactly, and I think it does like the milliseconds or something. So yeah, so this is one of the kind of basic modules, which is called or libraries, I think we should call it, which is the date time library. There is a lot of libraries that are available. And here's a few of them that are actually very useful. So the request library, and it's an HTTP library. So what it does is it helps you make GET requests, POST requests, PUT requests, delete requests through a web portal. So if you wanted to post, meaning send data to a web portal, you would do it with the request library. If you wanted to get information from a web portal, you would do it with the request library. Scapy, I guess, or Scapy. It sends, sniffs, dissects, and forges network packets. This is important for pen testing and network scanning and stuff like that. And then PWN tools, they don't say own, they say pwn. It's kind of weird, but when you hack somebody, instead of saying you just got owned, you would say you just got pwned. It's weird. I know it's weird. But they don't use the O. They would just use PW. Anyways, that's kind of irrelevant. But it's an exploit development library. So if you want to own somebody, basically, you use something like this, and it's a CTF and exploit development library. So there are a lot of libraries, and if you wanted to install them on your own machine, you would use pip, which is the package installer for Python. And if you have Python 3, you would use pip 3. If you have Python 2, you would use pip 2. If you have a normal installation of Python, Python 1, I guess, you would use pip. But if you go to python.org, based on this original link that we did, which is downloading it from here, this is Python 3 that you would be downloading. So if you're downloading Python 3, you need to refer to pip as pip 3. And then so it would be pip 3 install, requests if you don't have it, or pip 3 install scapy, whatever, if you don't have it. And then same thing goes with uninstall. So pip 3 uninstall such and such, pip 3 update such and such. So that's the basic command for pip. So that was basically it. I really wish that I could have done these projects without using any of the hints, but I had to use the hints, and I'm kind of upset about that, but it's whatever. At least we got the result, and at least we were able to get our flags from it. And you got a sample, you got an idea of how to actually use those things and get them done. So this was the Python basics room inside TryHackMe. This is, again, a free room, so you can get access to this for free and then just play around with it and kind of learn some of the basics with Python. And then there's the paid version of TryHackMe that is $12. You get the link in the description below, and you would get $5 off of that, and it would be available to you for $7 whole. So super affordable, really, really fun to use, and I would highly recommend that you get both the free and the paid version of TryHackMe so you can try out all the paid rooms as well. That's only available to subscribers. And yeah, just learn as much as you can from it. This is your boy Hank Hackerson with Hank Hacks Hackers. I hope you learned a lot today. This was a nice refresher for me, so I'm excited that I went through it again. And yeah, make sure you like, subscribe, share, comment, notify, turn on the notification bell so that you get notified the next time that we drop something, especially with the pen testing modules, because these are really, really fun to do. And the next one is going to be Python for pen testers. So we did Python basics, and the next one that we're going to do is Python for pen testers. So make sure that you subscribe and turn on the notification bell so that you get notified when that video comes out. It's your boy Hank Hackerson. I will talk to you soon.